Toronto Maple Leafs honestly are a clown show. And Keith Pelly is at the center of it as a ringmaster of this circus because it's amazing to see an organization this big with this much investment making the decisions that it did. We got the announcement last night that the Maple Leafs have hired John Chayka to be the GM, and Matt Sundin is going to come on as an executive director of player operations, whatever random title he has. So apparently, Keith Pelly talked to MLSE CEO and president Keith Pelly, who talked to apparently 27 people or something like that, and did his deep due diligence and went and hired Chayka, who hasn't been in the league for like 5 years. And when he was in the league, he was not a successful GM. He was a GM for the Arizona Coyotes for 4 seasons, of which he was suspended by the league, which in turn was because he was, conduct detrimental to the team. He was trying to, I guess, get out of his contract or something and go apply for a Devil's job or something like that. And then on top of that, there was a whole combine testing policy where the Coyotes lost a first and a second round pick. And ever since then, this guy hasn't been in the league. And so then he apparently was working as a CEO for some company that oversaw like 50 Wendy's restaurants or something like that. So are the Maple Leafs just went from BP's to Wendy's? Like it's about pizzas and burgers now? Like I don't understand what they are doing, because you have your pick of the litter, you would think, unless the thing is no one wants to go and work for Pelly and no one wants to be in Toronto. There was rumors about Doug Armstrong. There's probably a lot of guys out there, but you would think that maybe you can hold off a couple of days. Tampa Bay got eliminated. Maybe John Cooper could be the answer. But you decide to give the keys to a guy who was hired as the youngest GM ever because he's an analytical mind. But we haven't seen anything like that because clearly he also didn't like following rules back then. And sure, he said he took accountability. It's on him. And I guess people do that and things change over time. But how does this make any sense that for the GM job of the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is the best that you can do? Did Keith Pelly just use ChatGPT to come up with his answer? Is that what he got? And he's like so smart that he's the smartest guy in the room. It was also comical when Steve Simmons, who's a character in his own right, did kind of put Pelly in his place with something that's already gone viral, and you guys can go online and check that out. But it's funny in the sense that this is the best that they can do. I mean, Simmons didn't look that great. Pelly's response wasn't great either. And, so you're giving the keys to the truck in terms of a guy that hasn't been in the league for 5 years. And then a guy that was, a very important part of your franchise many years ago, but he hasn't had anything to do with the NHL in well over a decade. I think it's like 2009. Sundin hasn't even been around. And now apparently he's going to move back to Toronto with his family. Like, what are you guys going to do? And apparently there's no talk of a rebuild, and you guys have nothing. The funny thing is, tomorrow's a draft lottery, and it's going to be comical to see when these guys lose their pick to the Bruins. And even if they don't lose their pick and they keep it in the top 5, they're going to lose future picks for the next couple of years to the Bruins and Flyers from their, ridiculous trades that Brad Treliving made, who also in his own right was a terrible hire. So when you factor in those guys and the decisions that they've made, like when Treliving got hired, did you not see how crappy the Calgary Flames were, how he ruined them? He let Johnny walk, for nothing. And now you let Mitch Marner walk for nothing. Then, wanted to come in, check the lay of the line. Like, dude, if you're taking over a job, you already know what you need to do for that franchise. Get going. Start making the moves you need to do. And now if you're not going to rebuild, what are you going to do? You actually have nothing really in the pipeline. You have no picks. You have a core that sucks. You don't have any big piece, to work with. There is no, some of these other teams that you look at, they have a stud defenseman. Toronto has nothing like that. You have Austin Matthews, who I've mentioned many times, I think is overrated. He is not a superstar player, but in, Maple Leaf land, he is. And if he is, then what you should do is try to trade him now, because he's only had 2 years left, and you're not winning the cup with the way your team is assembled right now. And your limited cap space isn't going to allow you to do anything. So what I would do is, it doesn't matter what I would do. I'm not the GM. Let's see what Chayka does. Because really, this is going to be a tire fire. I have not seen any positive comments from anyone regarding this hire. Like, how out to lunch can you be? Because clearly this is going to be the New York Jets of the NHL, where they're going to suck for years. Talk about the Sabres. The Sabres, Terry Pagula has his ways in being a crappy owner, which I understand. And so some of the moves have restricted that team over the years. And it's unfortunate for the Sabres that the rebuild didn't go well. But a lot of people were pulling for the Sabres. And the Sabres now have moved on to the second round of the playoffs. So even though they missed 14 years, they've pretty much done as much as these guys have done in the last 14 years, because that's great. You made some money for the company, and you still got out of the first round as many times as the Sabres did in the last 14 years. So what are we doing here with your all-star cast of, superstar players that you've assembled, where you make boneheaded decision after boneheaded decision, and now you make another one, so keep the trend going. And I feel for Leafs fans. I mean, why do you cheer for these bunch of losers? Like, there's so many other teams that actually have a future, and now you're not going to get anywhere with this team. At least some of these other teams, maybe there'll be lottery luck tomorrow and they'll get the first overall pick. But at Gavin McKenna, Ivor Stenberg, you get one of those kids, you're going to ruin them anyways, because you're going into a crappy situation. So it's best you lose your pick to Boston, because that is the most Leafiest thing ever. And then, figure out what you want to do with this roster of yours that is, unfortunately for the players, it's kind of not going to win a cup or win anything anytime soon, because they're not going to go to the playoffs anytime soon. That division is now loaded. The Florida Panthers are going to rebound and be competitive again. Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, Tampa. Tampa could trade away Kucherov and they still would make the playoffs, just because, they also have a good goalie. They have good defensemen. They have other good forwards. The Toronto Maple Leafs have none of that. You have Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Wall as your two goalies, and they're supposed to kind of help you. And nothing on them. It's not their fault. No offense to Wall and Stolarz, but that's the best you're going to do. Like, this again, coming from the guy when you had Tree Living in charge, from the guy that had Kari Ramo and Yanni Ortio and other losers in Calgary before you got Markstrom for a couple of years there. Either way you look at it, this is a useless hire by a useless CEO, by a useless franchise. That's not going to win a cup, so for any of those hardcore fans I want to hate, you're useless too. Go cheer on a winner somewhere else, because it sure ain't going to be in Toronto. Because the Buffalo Sabres, the Ottawa Senators, and the Montreal Canadiens are all going to be stronger than the Toronto Maple Leafs for the foreseeable future. Unless something drastic happens, which is you win the lottery, you draft Gavin McKenna, you flip Austin Matthews and get some more younger pieces that maybe you might have some exciting hockey, that eventually there's kind of a path to a rebuild. Because otherwise, this team ain't going anywhere. Sorry.